Welcome to the Light Home Sustainable Design podcast series. We talk with the architects and builders about green design and homes that really suit the way we love to live. I'm Amanda Faulkner and welcome to Light Home. Today I'm speaking to Design Ambassador Carolyn McFarland about a project that she's chosen, which was designed by Scott Carpenter Architects, and it's called the Banzai Residence, and it's at Salt Village. Where on earth is Salt Village, Carolyn?
Salt Village is near Kingscliff, just south of the New South Wales-Queensland border. So as a contrast to my last house that I picked, which was down on the south coast, this one is up in the top of northern New South Wales.
And why do you think it's a great example of a light home?
This one is, in contrast to the ones I picked before, it's a house which is in the sort of subtropics area. And I think it's a great example because it uses the advantages of what you can do with a light home with a orientation of a block which is not quite ideal. So the block, the orientation of the block the house is on, the long sides actually face east and west, which is sort of opposite that you want. So you've got all this exposure to the east and the west, and the architect has heavily used the light home construction to make this work for their advantage and make a comfortable house to live in.
Okay, so let's pick up on that then. So how have they done it? What have they done to work with that less than optimal orientation?
So what they've done, they've actually orientated the main living areas and the main bedrooms to the north. So the north is sort of where the rear of the garden is, if you look at the photos. So the main living area, the outside room, they do get the north orientation, and there's a little pop out on the side near the pool where they've got, that also gets north orientation. They've got the long side to the east, which has a large sort of glassed void area. So there's a lot of glass on the outside. That's controlled with louvers on the outside to control the sun in the mornings. That void also brings in light into the plan of the house. So you still get sort of the northern light coming into the centre of the plan. But they also use ventilation. So they've got lots of louvers so you can get air movement through. The actual upstairs walls are actually double thickness. They're 200 mils thick, which is like 20 centimetres thick, and they've jam-packed that full of insulation. So it's a really well-insulated box. And the choice of material, so it's up the top is clad with timber. Now, timber is not a great conductor, which means it doesn't absorb heat and retain it and then reabsorb it. It sort of just lets it, it doesn't sort of bring all of that heat that it hits during the day and takes it back into the house. So it's a clever choice of materials, and it's using the light homes that you can actually get a really thick cavity and fill it with insulation.
Sorry, and can you just explain that for people just a little bit more? So when you say, for example, that the timber doesn't retain heat, so that's a good thing. Is that what you're saying in this instance?
Well, it's a good thing, yes. So if you imagine, so a piece of metal, if you put a piece of metal in the sun, and if you put a piece of timber in the sun, and then you sit it there for 5 minutes, and then you touch the metal and it's hot. So it actually absorbs the heat and retains it. So when you touch it, it's hot. If you touch the timber, it doesn't feel as hot. It doesn't retain that heat for you to touch. That means it also doesn't conduct it, which means it doesn't sort of drag it in from one side and put it into the other. So the problems with metal, say with aluminium windows, and why they're not as well performing as timber windows, is that on the inside of a house, if there's sun hitting the metal on the outside, you can feel that heat on the inside, and then that sort of heats the air around it and puts that heat into the inside of the building, where timber doesn't do that because it's just the property of the nature of the product.
Okay, and so so they've used a combination of like a timber-based product, the shadow clad, and they've also used a fibre cement product, linear weatherboards as well, haven't they? On the that must be on the ground floor, is that right?
Yes, the linear weatherboards have used a combination on the ground floor, the linear weatherboards, and also the James Hardie Sky On Matrix cladding, which is at the entry. So if you look at the picture of the entry, the smooth board that you see, that's the just the fibre cement panel system. So yes, so.
And how have they dealt with the western wall then? Because
well, presumably
that gets a lot of sun hitting it. So how have they dealt with that part?
So the western wall doesn't have many openings. They only have small openings, which they have just for ventilation, so they can get some cross ventilations, but very small area. It's just really just plain wall that has a massive insulation through it, so that and with insulation, the thicker the insulation is, the better it performs. So if you have a thin wall, you can only get, you know, the amount of insulation that you put in there is less. If you've got a thicker wall, you can get more insulation in and it works more for you. So it keeps the heat out. So they have that really thick wall on the western side. It also is the advantage that they will have a house next door to them on that western side, and because of the, you know, what happens to most houses on it, if it's a two-storey house, that house will also, you know, cause some overshadowing on that elevation. So it will rely on, you know, a next-door house being there. But not a lot of openings, a lot of wall with material that doesn't absorb heat, like brick or metal, and a lot of insulation.
So in relation to the lightweight construction and the, you know, the plan that they've achieved, so I guess part of it is related to using materials that don't retain heat, but presumably the lightweight construction allows you to get this sort of thicker cavity area without taking up as much floor space. Is that part of the reason for using the lightweight materials?
Exactly. You know, it is just a really efficient way of being able to, you know, fill in a large cavity with insulation, and that's where lightweight construction really has an advantage over other types.
And so was this built, I mean, I don't know, you tell me, was this built cost effectively, do you think, this home?
This was really cost effective. I mean, it's an architect designed house, full service, and it was about $1,750 a square metre, which is really a really good price. And it, you know, it's got you know, really nice finishes. It looks, you know, spectacular, and it was very cost effective. So, you know, I think it's a really great example of how you can get a cost-effective house.
And so aside from the, you know, really working with, you know, orientation and trying to do some clever things with the design, are there any other sustainability attributes that you'd mention in relation to this home?
Well, again, you know, I sort of, as I've said with a lot of other houses that I've picked, it actually got a concrete floor on the ground floor, exposed concrete slab that has a burnished finish. And again, that is, it does get cool up there. It's still in northern New South Wales. It still gets sort of a bit of a, you know, 3 days of winter, but that allows the sun is, you know, it's designed that the sun comes into the house during the winter time. It warms up the slab, and again, that's got a lot of embodied heat. So, you know, the sun hits it, it warms up, it keeps that heat, and then it re-radiates at night. So that's,
and presumably all of that insulation helps really keep that heat contained in the home too.
Yes, that's right. You know, look, they've used glass. I think they put the specs on there, but, you know, they've just got more than just a clear float glass. They've got a smart glass. They've the other environmental systems they've got solar panels on the roof. They collect their water, and it goes into an infiltration system. So it's sort of, the storm water sits in a tank, and then it slowly gets released into the ground around them, and they can do that because they're up in a sandy area. So it's up near the beach, so there's lots of sand. So their stormwater doesn't get taken off site down into the system. It gets distributed, you know, within their block. So, you know, that helps with overloading the river systems and stuff during peak rainfall. And I'm sure there's other, you know, rainwater tanks and, you know, sort of what we just sort of say, oh, you know, the usual stuff. But yes. It is important to mention that they use that.
Yes. Is there anything else that you'd mention that you think the architects have done particularly well? What about this batten treatment that's on the front of the house? It kind of looks great. Is there a functional reason why that's there?
Yeah, well, on the front of the house, it's a privacy issue. You know, like it's a little veranda to a bedroom, so they have the battening. It's also that where there's more battens, that's where the western sun will sort of come around from the south and come and hit in. So the battening helps with that. And on the other side, same sort of thing. It's on the northern side. The battening does help, you know, shading and privacy as well. So where the more battens are is where they need the privacy. On the back, you see they use a really beautiful little product called Japanese water chains, and that's where the downpipes are connected
Yes.
sort of to these water chains. So instead of, you see some houses that use chains as instead of downpipes. Well, this is a Japanese version, and so the water comes down the downpipe, and then it goes into these little chains. They're like tiny little buckets, and the water sort of fits and it runs down there, and then it goes into the pots. And in the pots are the pipes of where the chains run in, and there's other pipes that connect it to the rainwater tanks. But it's just a beautiful little detail that they found that just makes something very special out of a downpipe. So
yes, yes. And wrapping up, anything else that you'd mention? I'm just scrolling through the photographs here. I mean, there's just, I think, as with many of the projects that you've chosen, quite a simple palette of materials, but really beautiful detailing.
Yes, simple plan, single room depth. I mean, I love in this house, the kitchen, is in the centre of the house. It's the place where it has all the light that comes in. You've got the pool, a really good relationship to the pool. And, I spoke to the architect and he said the client loves operating the house. And it's a house that, if you open up a certain window, the breeze will come through. It has been it's got the pipe work for air conditioning, but the client hasn't had to put the air conditioning in. And he doesn't want to put the air conditioning out because he says, look, I can open up this window and that window and the breeze will come through, and the house is cool in summer, warm in winter. And, I just love that central area of that kitchen with all the light coming in. It's just a centre zone of the house, and I just think it's a lovely family home.
Well, Carolyn, thank you very much, and thank you also for all of the choices that you've made over the last year. We really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure, and I hope everyone has enjoyed looking at them.
Okay, great, Carolyn. Thank you.